Hello and welcome to another episode of the Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. And, you look around the world today and it looks like things are going to hell in a handbasket in a lot of ways. And you got COVID. We're coming on the backside of COVID. Inflation, raised its head again, and we seem to be wrestling that one to the ground a little bit. But layoffs are occurring again. I mean, none of this is new news in any way, shape, or form. It's just part of the human condition of being alive on this planet. Stuff happens and stuff recedes. It comes up, it goes back. But one of the things that I think is important for us, and this is where I want to really focus this episode, is on how do we position ourselves to thrive in the midst of what a lot of folks might think seems to be catastrophic circumstances. And my experience in working with the folks that I work with, we too quickly get captured by external circumstances and kind of decide that because of the external circumstances, we are limited in what we can do and how we can actually show up on the planet. And there could not be more, in my estimation, ways to refute that than I can. Your external circumstances do not dictate in any way, shape, or form your experience of living this life on this planet today or what your future is going to be. And the guest I've got on the show today is somebody that is actually an expert in this, and he's got a book that just dropped, just came out, called Thriving in the Storm. And when this came across my desk, I went, I got to have him on the show. Because Bill Murphy, really has dialed this in. He really knows how to speak to this, and what this is that I, am looking forward to having a conversation about is how do we thrive in the midst of what appears to be a storm. And part of that for me has to do with recognizing that I'm not a victim of anything in life. Life happens for me; it doesn't happen to me. And Bill has got a way to work with this, and he's got, I think, a very interesting approach to this. So I want to just welcome Bill Murphy to the show.
Thanks, Blaine. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it is absolutely my pleasure, my friend. You've done a lot of stuff, and I want to just kind of touch on a couple of things here. You've raised over $500,000 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. You support a number of charities. You've got a new foundation that you've just put together that is now functioning, called the Thrive Foundation, which is not coincidentally consistent with your message. But your background in psychology and the way that you actually approach how people live life and navigate perturbation, upset, is something that I think is going to be very useful for our listeners to work with today. So if you are looking for an opening here it is. How did you come up with this? Where are you going with it? And what can people legitimately do to get in front of circumstances?
Yeah, there's a lot of things we can do to get in front of circumstances. You said it. It's earlier. It's or maybe off camera, but when we have a situation, and we react rather than respond, that reaction is usually going to hit the pause, and it's not always favorable. And now you set yourself up for a poor reaction. So I really think it's important to hit the pause button before we react to anything. And so I want to talk a little bit about, playing the victim is when things happen, like you said, when things happen to us, how are we responding, not reacting? And when we are in victim mentality, it's very easy not to put our feet on the floor in the morning and get out of bed and give ourselves a convenient subconscious excuse not to do things because you're down and out, or you're depressed, or you're sad, or you're anxious, or you're hostile and angry, or you're upset at the day before, or just stuff that you talked about, external circumstances, your external circumstances. So what can you do about it? Immediately to flip the switch and move forward and take action is just, what am I grateful for? Where am I thankful? And what are my blessings? And those things are free. We don't need to be making 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures to figure that out. It's free. The blessings and the health of my family, the roof over my head, my wonderful career, my wonderful friends, my social groups, my community. It's all free stuff that you can be grateful for. And the second you do that, it actually changes your physiological being, because you take those feelings of despair, doubt, sadness, anger, whatever, and now you start to feel a little bit more euphoric. You start to feel a little bit more purposeful, and then you can put your feet on the floor and move and take action, and then go about your day. And that usually incorporates a lot of morning routine stuff.
Right.
To do it, but at least that's the start, because there's some research. I was just checking on worry, right? I was doing a talk on worry. 90% of our worry thoughts are usually how we start our day. We're thinking it. Now, if you ever practice this in the morning, just think about what you normally think about. You usually think about, oh my goodness gracious, I have all these problems ahead, or I have all these things I have to tackle. Like, how am I possibly going to do this? Or this issue happened and this issue happened. And then you start that vicious cycle, and it's just worry, 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 worry. 90% of those things don't happen. And the 10% of the things that do happen of your worries aren't as bad as they ever were supposed to be or seen. And then to take that a step further, 85% of those worry thoughts we think the next day. So we got to break that cycle, and it's a deliberate practice. But for those listeners, if you want to try this, immediately gauge or write down or whatever the thoughts that come to you in the morning, and if you do that, you'll catch yourself thinking about some of the things you have angst about that of your scheduled day. It's really a practice that can work and change your outlook and even how you start the day.
As you're talking about this, Bill, just the thought that flips through my mind here has to do with how most people actually engage life, and they do it accidentally. It's without premeditation, without a thoughtful way of engaging, and it's engaging that I'm bringing to the table here. How I engage anything, how I begin anything, the beginnings usually portend the rest of the way that whatever the thing is going to unfold, and it's the beginning. And those of you that are listening, I would be willing to bet one of my last dollars that you've got some sort of a morning ritual that you engage in, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, particularly if you're a regular listener. But the idea of beginning with gratitude, this is something I've done for years. An old friend of mine, a dear mentor, passed away at the first of this year, Bob Proctor, kind of drilled this into me. Said, gratitude. Everything starts with gratitude. And he would just keep coming back. And what's beautiful about gratitude, and I want to just kind of check this in your thinking here, it's impossible for me to be grateful for something that I don't experience having. Okay. So gratitude is an acknowledgement that I have this. Now, here's where this gets to be interesting. Having something is a state of consciousness. It's not a state of having physicality with the thing. I have abundance in my life. I'm grateful for the abundance in my life. I look at my bank account and it may say something other than abundance, but I'm grateful for abundance, and I'm not held captive by and reactive to that number that shows up in my checkbook. The gratitude of abundance is a supposition that it already exists. It already exists in my experience. I feel it. Now, that is something that I think you actually speak to in your book, if I'm not mistaken. Thriving in the storm, beginning with gratitude. It's already happened, whatever it is in the positive sense. I just haven't arrived. That port, and I love the sailing metaphor, that port in the storm, it's out there. It really does exist. Calm water and calm seas and fair winds exists. over there. I may not be in the midst of it right now, but I hold that place and I'm grateful for that port. How does that comport with, no pun intended here. How does that comport with your take on things?
So the flip side of that is lack. Just when you talk about that, I mean, you have these things in your consciousness or physically that you're thankful for, but if you want to be in that victim mentality that we talked about, it's the worry of the lack or the scarcity mentality. Mm-hmm. I don't have this. I'm in real estate. I'm in mortgage lending business, and we're at 40-year high inflation rates. We're at 25-year interest rates. We're at decade low inventory levels and of houses. And I could focus on all of those things, which a lot of my peers in this industry are right now, and they're leaving the business. I'm saying, okay, this is not ideal. And it, if we're being honest, it's pretty terrible. However, it's a huge opportunity to take market share with everybody vacating the business because they don't have that thriving mentality. Now, where's all the opportunity you have? It's right there with people being upset, victim mentality, leaving the business, getting laid off, whatever the case may be, but it's more of an opportunity. I'm doing things that I haven't done in 25 years now.
Yeah.
That because I'm not above that. It's necessary. So, Blaine, you've been in business for years, highly successful. Sometimes you have to go back to the very basics, as advanced as you are, to get stuff done. You can't say, you know what, I did that 25 years ago. I'm not about to go back there or I'd get out of the business. Well, guess what? You just took on a victim mentality, a scarcity mentality, and an arrogance to some degree. That there's no thriving with arrogance. It'll catch up with you eventually.
Well,
so I was going to say humble.
Yeah. Humility comes into play. Yeah, I'm humble enough to go back to the beginning. Yeah. And one of the ways that I've defined success is it's developing the capacity to continuously start over. If I haven't developed that muscle, I look up one day and go, well, what happened? Well, the people started over and they went in a new direction with it and left you kind of back here. The idea, I mean, I remember, John Wooden, the great UCLA basketball coach. Yeah. And Lou Alcindor at the time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bill Walton going, okay. Because, Bill, he would say, you got to tie your shoes.
Yeah.
I'm going to teach you how to tie your shoes. I mean, I'm 20 years old. I know how to tie my shoe. No, we go back to the basics. Tie your shoe. I don't want anybody getting blisters. And UCLA's offense at that time was a fast break offense. I mean, it was, you don't win, 12 national championships back to back without knowing how to continuously start over. And each team he started over with. He
did. And the beauty of that story is that this is leadership. And you mentioned leadership earlier. Wooden's teams were never beyond the shoe tying of the first practice. Yep. When he made them do it over, and it was actually put your socks on right and your shoes.
Yes.
And I love that. It's one of my favorite exercises ever reading. So
when everything goes sideways for me, I always look at, okay, where do I need to start over again? What do I need to relearn? What do I need to let go of? What do I need to learn new? Those sorts of things. And the idea, you've got black belts in a martial arts discipline that's actually a fairly unique discipline, Krav Maga. And I've practiced in the dojo with Aikido.
Oh, okay.
So the idea of, you're talking about the distinction between reacting and responding here. I remember when I was in the dojo years ago in Japan, watching my sensei during a randori. I mean, you got people coming at him all over the place. And this guy's, Rudolf Nureyev, Baryshnikov. He's out there just doing the moves and just elegant. And
Mm.
at the end of the randori, I said, Sensei, my broken Japanese here, how do you stay centered? I mean, you're completely centered the whole time. He looked at me with a little twinkle in his eye, and he says, "Oh, grasshopper, so to speak. Yeah, grasshopper. I'm not always centered. I know where my center is, and I can come quickly back to it, and that's my source of power. I know where my center is, and I can quickly come back to it. When I'm knocked off, and he said, I'm knocked off balance a lot. I've got 14 people coming at me all at once. Yeah. How do I recover? And this is the response reacting.
Yeah.
When I'm kicked into reaction, I'm off balance. And the only move I've got when I'm off balance in a reactive state is to overcompensate instead of pause, recenter, turn, face, and move.
Yeah. So very, very similar in Krav Maga. I actually talk about this as well. And you said stay centered. I love that. Mine is I practice the pause, but during if you're feeling overwhelmed, whether there's somebody's mounting you in a headlock or you're on ground or whatever, or just you have people coming at you and people tense up. When you tense up, when you're feeling overwhelmed, you tense up. Then you use so much energy that you have no cardiovascular capacity anymore. And you really haven't done anything. You're just gassed. So what I tell everybody, and this is what I practice, is even though you're in it, breathe. Deep breath in.
That's a novel idea.
Just breathe. So that's the center. That's what you're talking about, the center.
Yep.
So and this is how I practice the pause. Now, I used to fat finger that keyboard in business. At the second an email that came across me sideways that I didn't agree with, years ago. And you know what? I'm like, okay, what are we going to do here? And that changes your physiology as well. And it grounds you. And now you can think clearly. And you can also get your wind back if you're in it physically as well. We were doing some exercises and there was a gal that she's like, I get claustrophobic and I get overwhelmed, and she's a black belt. And, and when she's like, I just got to tap out, I got to stop. I said, no, just practice breathing. It's not as bad as it seems. Just breathe. And then she just recently told me, she said, since you've told me to breathe, I don't get overwhelmed anymore, and I'm able to regain my composure. Yeah. So it works. It works in life, and it works if you got 14 people coming at you a little bit.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it taps into the vagus nerve. It settles that, the parasympathetic system, and we're off to the races from there. We're going to take a real quick break. When we come back, Bill, I want to go into some detail with some of the material in your book, beginning with, what you say is the critical first step to thriving in any storm, which is identifying your why. And I want to get a bit of an understanding of what you mean by your why. I think I've got a pretty good sense of that, but I want to be able to expand on that. So we're going to take a real quick break, folks, talking to Bill Murphy and how to thrive in a storm. So we'll talk in a little bit. I want to thank you for listening. I want to also invite you right now to go to blainebartlett.com. And on that site, which is my personal website, you'll see services up on the top menu. I'd like you to click on Leadership Mastermind. Now, why I want you to do that is we have structured a mastermind program that is very unusual and it is very powerful. And by going onto that site and clicking that link, you'll be taken to a landing page that is an invitation to join this mastermind. It's a 52-week-long exploration of what it takes to be a highly effective leader in today's fast-changing environment. You won't regret it. And if you've been liking what you've been listening to on these Soul of Business podcasts, how does one become a leader that can keep connection to the soul of business? That's what we look at. That's what we're about in this mastermind program. So again, go to blainebartlett.com and click on the services link, and there you'll find the link to the Leadership Mastermind program.
Look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for listening to this little commercial. And now back to our show.
Welcome back, folks. Just before we took a break, I had positioned, with Bill, something that I wanted to explore, which was, why identifying your why is, from his perspective, a critical first step of thriving in any storm. And Bill, I'm just going to toss you the floor here, and let's see where we go, because you've got some very interesting things around this. I think,
all right,
that are going to be worth it.
Well, so if your why is compelling enough, and people they don't start because they don't have the action plan in place, or they don't know where to start. If your why is compelling enough, and that is your vision, and that is your goal, the how will take care of itself. So just begin to go towards that target. And here's the other thing, and I find this with coaching some of the folks over the years, is they're married to their why that they had 20 years ago. You have to be you have to be open-minded to evolve that why. Now, when I got in business, I didn't have any kids. I was just so competitive that I wanted to beat everybody on that sales scoreboard. And I was just going to outwork you, outgrit you, outgrind you, and just push forward because I wanted to be there. And I was hungry monetarily, and I wanted to experience life with that. Well, when we have a family, that why changes.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's, I need to provide a life, and not only provide the life, whether it's monetarily or more importantly for me, it was monetarily, but I wanted to model a good work ethic. I wanted to model for my kids appropriate boundaries to get it done. And so that has been my why over the last 22 years. My oldest son is 22. I have a 19 and a 16-year-old daughters. And now my why is, I've enjoyed some success in business, right? And now my why is legacy. And we talked earlier about the Thrive Foundation. So we do a lot of charity work, we give back, and that was part of the why, the modeling piece. But now it's transitioned into significance. You can be successful, but are you significant? Like, successful, I think, is more individualistic.
Mm-hmm.
Significant is for the greater good, and how you're empowering others, how you're impacting the community. So that's kind of not my new why that has developed over the last couple of years. And that's why we came up with a nonprofit. That's why I wrote the book. I mean, I get really deep and personal and vulnerable, where, I had some close friends that I grew up with that are like, Murph, wow, man, I didn't know that happened to you. And that explains a lot. And, I did it. And I broke that, grew up a tough kid from central Massachusetts that didn't take stuff from anybody, right? And so to get on that vulnerability piece, I think is important, because a lot of us men don't do that. We it's taboo. We sweep it under the rug, whatever. And then now they have their success, and now they get heart attacks, they get sick, they get cancer, they get whatever. And I'm not saying that's the reason, but I'm saying if you suppress stress, if you suppress some things that happened to you in the past, and you're not willing to work through it and understand it and recognize it and become aware, then that changes. So those were my demons. I didn't face any of that stuff till a few years ago. But then, since I have been able to make peace with my past, and that's the first chapter in my book. And it's not peace with my past for all my missteps, because there's plenty of those, but it's peace with my past for those who have wronged me, and those who have hurt me really badly. I don't believe in karma, rooting for bad karma against anybody, because that's ill will, and that's ill will you suppress. And that's how that can come out in being sick. And so I believe in forgiving those who have wronged you, as well as yourself, for your own missteps. It's really hard to do, and it takes a lot of work. Coaching and therapy really can make a difference. But so that does take me now to the legacy piece, where I do want to give back, where I do want to make a difference, where I do kind of want to make up for some of my missteps along the way in my journey.
I love the way you've just kind of outlined that and framed that. The clients I work with, when we talk about why, or in my language, the for the sake of what do I do what I do, or for the sake of what do I show up in the world, that's a living question. It's not a static question. And to the point that you just illustrated here, it changes. And this, for me, is really what the soul of anything is actually about. When I can tap into that soul, that piece of anything that gives it life, gives it expression, by definition, its desire is to grow and to expand. By definition, that's what the soul of anything wants to do. It wants to have, do, and be more. So anytime I land on a static definition of who I am or who we are as a company, I've actually created the trap that will kind of hold me back, because it's not a static definition. I have to be willing to revisit it. And this goes back to the whole notion of developing the capacity to continuously start over, part of which, in my experience, is asking the question, what's changed in my why? What's changed in my why? What wants to be expressed now? What wants to be expressed differently? I was on a show the other day, and I was asked this question. It was about mastering life. And the question that was posed to me is, how do you actually master life? And I don't think you master life. You master stages of consciousness. And once you've mastered a stage of consciousness, you're automatically moved up to a different level of consciousness. And in that move up to a different level of consciousness, you become more aware of more things. So different choices begin to appear. And I think this is how life actually can be assembled if we do it intentionally and deliberately. I stop worrying about being an ascended master, and I just pay attention to where I'm at and master where I'm at. Without excuses. I have agency at this level of consciousness. Let's master this. And then next thing I know, I'm somewhere else, and I master that one. And that's the progression of life, where you end up looking back going, legacy is important now. I hadn't thought about that before. What choices are in front of me? Where do I go with that? Yeah,
I think it's so important. I've confronted some of my demons, and that I could have easily have some ill will towards, and I said, where's the piece of legacy? Do you want your tombstone to read your name and the dates you lived and blank? That's it. No motto, nothing you stood for, nothing. Right? Yeah. Man, and then that's where the impact comes in. That's where the significance comes in. That's where the legacy comes in. Like, absolutely, do it for the greater good. I mean, we'll hear it all the time. Leave this world better than you came in, right? I mean, let's not just take up space.
I get to live from that.
Yeah.
And that makes the whole, my kids, my grandkids, the business folks that I work with, all that stuff. How do I make it Wallace Wattles talks about in the science of
you're going to Wallace Wattles, huh?
Oh boy, yeah.
Wow. Early 1900s there.
Early 1900s, yeah. Be a center of distribution, not a center of accumulation here. Leave people with the experience of increase. And you do that well, you're going to have a pretty successful life.
Yeah.
Bill, where can people find out more about what you're up to? I know the book just dropped, and again, Thriving in the Storm. It's an Amazon bestseller. The
website is www.thrivinginthestorm.com. We got some workbooks and journals, some of the things we talked about in there, some exercises that you can download, and then you could reach out.
All right. Yeah. Email, contact information, that sort of stuff's all there for him.
Yep. Just go to that site.
All right. Folks have been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. My guest today has been Bill Murphy, the author of Thriving in the Storm. Pick the book up. You will not be disappointed. There are some jewels in there, some absolute pearls of wisdom. And it's actionable. It's not just a thinking piece. It's action. There are some very specific grounded, 5-step implementation plans, 8 techniques to help ensure you perform when facing adversity. All of these things are in this book. So, do yourself a favor. Find a way to thrive in the storm that you experience in your life. And as you're listening to this, my admonition always at the end is to find yourself ways, plural, to be a center of distribution. Don't worry about accumulation. That takes care of itself. Nature is about distribution. Been listening to The Soul of Business. You can check out my website, blainebartlett.com. And there's all kinds of goodies on that site as well. And I look forward to having you join us next week in our next episode. Take care.
Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you. I didn't get to answer your soul question.
I know I got wrapped up in the other stuff here.
I prepared for that one.
Well, let's tack it in. Maybe we'll do an outtake on it. When you hear the soul of business, what comes to mind?
That's a great question, Blaine. Thanks for asking. I wasn't expecting that. Soul of Business podcast, right? So, and this goes for business and life, right? So I think culture is the most important thing. And I want to talk about that because we've all been at businesses and we've all had first jobs or we've all had corporate jobs or self-employed, right? And if you have a culture that doesn't align with what you're trying to do, you're going to be unhappy. And so I remember one of my first jobs in the mortgage space 25 years ago, I worked for a big bank. And I slowly in the first year became a top producer. And I had a question to make things better in the office, to make things better. So I just, like, not knowing any better, I called the CEO of the bank, and I never got a response. And 6 months later, I got a canned email that said, "Congratulations on Rookie of the Year." And I think they misspelled my name, right? So, like, what I understood then is you can never call the CEO. You could never reach that person because you have to go through your immediate manager to the regional manager, to the area manager, to the vice president, to the executive VP, to this, to that. And maybe you'll get a call in a month or an email in a month. And I just was like, that is not a way to do business. I've been with my company now, Fairway Mortgage, for 15 years. Our CEO will go on a recruiting call and we have 11,000 people. When I started, we had 600. He never changed the culture. And he said, we'll never be a hierarchy. We'll always be a horizontal culture. And that has always stuck with me. And I bring that into my family. It's just like, I'm not too good to do things with my kids if I want them to do chores or anything. We need to do this together. We need to do this. Like, you can take that in everything you do and just give that culture. And I think that is the soul of business too.
It is. And that's how you thrive in a storm, is you make sure your culture, whether it's a family or an organization, is set up for people to actually engage that way.
Yeah.
That's great.
I was prepared for that one.
Hey, I'll weave this in. I will, because that's great.
You don't have to. I wanted to share with you because I was appreciating the question, and it was really thought provoking, and it was like, humility. There's all kinds of things. Have fun. There's all kinds of. I was thinking about core values, and I was like, you know what? It's culture, man. It's
culture. Perfect. Bill, thanks for that.
Thank you.
That will get included.
Thank you. This was great. I really enjoy your podcast and listening to you I've gotten to know you through the podcast. So I understood your personality. So it's pretty cool.